We're here in the military room of the Marlboro County Historical Museum. The reason we're in the military room today is because it's Veterans Day, and we wanted to take just a few minutes to pay tribute to our local veterans, to thank them all for their service to our country, and also to show you just a little bit of the exhibits that we have related to Marlboro County and its military service. Before we do that, I wanted to talk just briefly about the history of Veterans Day. For that, we have to look back to World War I. The war officially ended June 28th of 1919 when the Treaty of Versailles was signed. However, the fighting had actually stopped prior to that on November 11th of 1918 when an armistice was reached between the Allied countries and Germany. And the first anniversary of that, which would have been November 11th, 1919, the first Armistice Day was held. That continued through the years, and in 1938 it was made a national holiday by act of Congress. By 1954, America had been involved in two additional wars, World War II and Korea, and Congress revisited that earlier act, changed the name from Armistice Day to Veterans Day, and made it a holiday to recognize the veterans not just of World War I, but of all wars that America was involved in. So that's where we are today, and I am now going to show you a little bit of the exhibits that we have here. We're very fortunate to have artifacts related to different periods in American history, American military history. What you're looking at here is a mural that hung in the headquarters of the 3rd Battalion, 178th Field Artillery of the South Carolina Army National Guard. This was our local National Guard unit. It was deployed to Iraq in 2004-2005 as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. This mural was painted by some of the members of the unit, and it hung in their headquarters in Iraq. It was brought back home with them and eventually made its way to the museum, where we are very honored to have it on display. We have a few additional items representing that time period. We have a uniform and pack from the Vietnam era. We have a footlocker from the Korean War. This belonged to Bluey Crossland, who was a Bennettsville native who fought in the Korean War. We have quite a few World War II artifacts. What you were looking at here is a battle flag that was flown aboard the USS Walter C. One during the Battle for Okinawa, April 1st to 15th, 1945. This was donated by the late William Allen Rogers, who served on board at that time, and this is Mr. Rogers' uniform from the U.S. Navy. This uniform belonged to Mrs. Aurelia Stubbs, who was in the Women's Army Corps during World War II. Now, Mrs. Stubbs was born in Hartsville and lived her early life there. That's where she was when she joined the Women's Army Corps. She served during World War II in Italy. She was a telephone operator. And later in life, after the war was over, she met and married H.D. Stubbs of Bennettsville, moved here, and lived the remainder of her life here. So this is her uniform also from the World War II period. This is our display on Palmer Field, which was a primary flight training school for pilots during World War II. It was located on Highway 9, the Cheraw Highway, where Powell Manufacturing was later. But during World War II, it served as a primary flight training school. We have a propeller from one of the planes that was used there. Now, this is a very interesting story to me. This is a uniform of a sort that was worn at the end of World War II by Harry Cephas. Longtime Bennettsville residents will remember Mr. Harry as the proprietor of the Sanitary Cafe, which was where Magnolia, Maine is now in Bennettsville. During World War II, Mr. Harry was just a young man who served in the military in the U.S. Army. He did photo reconnaissance in the Pacific Theater. When the war was over, he just happened to be the 3 millionth serviceman to return to American soil after the war. As the 3 millionth serviceman, they dressed him up in this Uncle Sam suit, and he led a parade through the streets of San Francisco. Here, I'm going to try to cut down the glare so you can see, we have a picture of him in his uniform greeting some other soldiers, and there he is in a more formal portrait. This was donated to us by Mr. Harry's nephew, who tells us that the flag that you see was flown by Harry's father at the Sanitary Cafe the entire time that he was overseas serving in the war. So this is another of our displays that we're very proud of.